Letter H. So let's get started. Sammy Hagar, All Night Long. This has some pretty good tracks on it. This is a live album. This is going to have songs that were also on Montrose and his solo career. This was released in '79. The songs on here are Red, Rock and Roll Weekend, Turn Up the Music, Young Girl Blues, and a fantastic live version of Bad Motor Scooter, which was a big hit for Montrose and really put Sammy Hagar's vocals on the map. The second for Sammy that I have in my collection is a self-titled album, Sammy Hagar. The songs on here are Growing Pains, Child to Man, Trans Am Highway Wonderland, Plain Jane, This Planet is on Fire, Burn in Hell. That's a really good song. That the guitars on that's fantastic. And also Never Say Die is a really good album track on there, and actually it's about veterans as well. And I'm not going to be reading every song that are on the album, just the album tracks that are on there that are standouts that I believe should receive special attention. Right here we have Sammy Hagar, Danger Zone. Danger Zone, this is one of his heaviest albums to date so far. 20th Century Man, Love or Money, Miles from Boredom, End the Night, Entering the Danger Zone, Bad Reputation, and Run for Your Life. This is a really good album. This is really good hard rock. And that's kind of odd for Sammy, because Sammy wasn't really hard rock, even though he's classified that way. To me, he was a little bit more than rock, a little bit harder than rock and roll, but not quite hard rock. But nevertheless, Sammy Hagar is a really fun artist to listen to. Really good high octane rock. Sammy Hagar, this is his debut album with Geffen Records. He was with Capitol. He left Capitol, and this was his debut record with Geffen, which is, I forgot the name. Oh yeah, Standing Hampton. And this has some really good tracks on it. Let's look at I'll Fall in Love Again, There's Only One Way to Rock, and Heavy Metal, and Baby's on Fire. Heavy Metal was the title track of the cartoon motion picture. And Inside Looking In and Sweet Hitchhiker, and does a pretty good cover of Piece of My Heart that was made famous by Janis Joplin. And the last album that I have for Sammy Hagar is VOA. That Standing Hampton, the one that I showed you, that was his breakout album. His breakthrough album. It said both ways, but this put him on the map big time. I Can't Drive 55, Rockin' My Blood, Dick in the Dirt, and VOA, and Burning Down the City. But I Can't Drive 55 is a big hit for him. And what I have next is an album by Daryl Hall and John Oates. It's a greatest hits called Rock and Soul Part 1. I believe that that's all that I personally need from Hall and Oates is, a greatest hits compilation. And the songs on here are, what you would expect from them. Sarah Smile, She's Gone, Rich Girl, Kiss on My List, You Make My Dreams, Private Eyes, They're Watching You. They watch your every move. I Can't Go For That, Man Eater, and this wonderful ballad on here, One on One. I like that song a lot. One on one, I want to play that game tonight. And what I have next is a live album by Hall & Oates, live at the Apollo. And what makes this one special is that most of side one is made up is with guest singers David Ruffin and Eddie Kendrick. And if you're not too familiar with those two names, maybe this will be familiar to you. They were the two original members of the Temptations. And side one is a Temptation medley that has Get Ready, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, The Way You Do the Things You Do, and My Girl. And then Hall & Oates comes back and they do Every Time You Go Away. That's how they end side one. I Can't Go For That, One on One, and Possession, Obsession. I should not have mentioned that song because I don't like it that much. And what's next is Albert Hammond Jr. This is a special album. I really like this album. I like Albert Hammond Jr. If you're not too familiar with his name, he is one of the two guitarists in the band The Strokes. He has made one EP and 4 solo albums. This was his second album. It's called Como Te Ame. Como Te Ama. The songs on here. This is a really good album if you're into that alternative rock of the mid 2000s. Bargain of a City, In My Room, Lisa. Track number 4, GFC, was one of the singles released from this album. Rocket, Victory at Monterey is a really good song too. And Spooky, and also the last track on here, it's kind of a weird one. It buys a lot of time. It's kind of like an instrumental. It's called Feed Me Jack, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Peter Sellers. And here's the albums for them. Oh, I forgot about this. These are red, as you can tell. There's 2 albums on here. It's not a double album. There's just 2 albums in here so that everything can fit. And when I had originally gotten this, it also had the like a little key, a little password so that you can download it online. Now we get into one of the Beatles, and we're doing H's, so I'm pretty sure y'all have guessed it. It is George Harrison, and what we're going to start off with is an album that was released. That was the first Beatles solo release when the Beatles were still together. And also, this was the first release on Apple. I'm talking about Wonderwall Music by George Harrison. Now, he does not sing on here. He does not play any instruments on here. But he does conduct the music. The music is of Eastern flair and of Western flair, with Indian musicians and English musicians on certain songs. This was a soundtrack for a movie. This is a pretty good album to throw on and just have in the background. I really enjoyed it, and it's instrumental, so I can't really deter I can't really tell what songs are which, but it's a good listen to. Stream it if you can. Now, the Beatles broke up in 1970, and the first release was by George Harrison. You know, George only was given 2 songs per album, except for on Revolver, he had 3 songs. And then on Sgt. Pepper's, I guess John and Paul noticed that, and they only gave him 1 on Sgt. Pepper's. But George had a lot of music in him. And, you know, a lot of people can give different reasons of why the Beatles broke up. And I think the Beatles broke up because they were just growing apart. They needed more room for their own music and their own ideas. And, you know, after a while, bands would break up. I never thought it was Yoko's fault. They grew apart, and a lot of legal matters were getting in the way after Brian Epstein died. But I'll talk about that later. George Harrison, let's get to one of his albums that's a major triumph in the world of rock music. All Things Must Pass. There it is. It's a really good looking album here. I mean, packaging is wonderful. This also comes with a poster of George Harrison inside his home at the time. That's pretty cool. And like I said before, that George had a lot of music pent up in him. And this is a triple album, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, he came out with a 1, 2, 3 triple album. And this is a star-studded affair. And let me go through these songs with you. Well, let me go through roll call first. Of course, it's George Harrison. Ringo Starr is on here, and so is Jim Gordon, who's a drummer, who will go on to be in Derek and the Dominoes and play with different artists like Bob Dylan. And also we got Klaus Vorman on bass and on guitar. Of course, George. And we do have Eric Clapton on there and Dave Mason from Traffic. Badfinger, who are credited here as being the rhythm guitars and the percussion. And yes, this was a star-studded event. You know, one thing about George was that he was loved and very respected by his peers. And another album of note, you guys know that I'm a sucker for the Double Live album. Well, George was also known for doing the first benefit concert. He did a benefit concert for the country of Bangladesh, which is an Asian country in the same area where Pakistan is, and where Pakistan is. And concert for Bangladesh. And this is not a double album, but this is a triple live album. And it's got a handsome looking book there. And all three albums are here in great condition. And let's go over roll call on this because it's very interesting. Of course, it starts off with side one. Side one is going to have Ravi Shankar, who taught George about the sitar, and he's a sitar genius. And George Harrison, of course, is on here. Ringo Starr, Leon Russell. But the big surprise on here, and Billy Preston's on here, and the big surprise on here is on side 5, where Bob Dylan takes over. At this time, Bob Dylan was a bit of a recluse. He hadn't performed in a while, and this concert was being held at Madison Square Garden. And George, asked his good buddy Bob Dylan to come on down and if he could perform, and he did. And boy, did he ever! The songs that Bob Dylan chose to play was A Hard Rain That's Gonna Fall, It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry, Blowing in the Wind, Mr. Tambourine Man, and Just Like a Woman. And to boot, he's singing in harmony with George, and it's wonderful. And the songs on here, besides the Bob Dylan songs, you've got George going back to his Beatle days, doing Something, Here Comes the Sun, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and standout tracks from the previous album, which was All Things Must Pass. He's got Wah Wah, My Sweet Lord, Waiting on You All, Beware of Darkness, and Ringo Starr comes in with one of his own solo songs called It Don't Come Easy, which was a big hit for him. And Billy Preston does do That's the Way God Planned It. And Leon Russell does a great rendition of Jumpin' Jack Flash that runs quite a bit long. Well, not too long, but longer than the original version. They do stretch it out with the band playing with them. And this is good stuff. George really, he came out of the gates swinging. And next, George had quite a bit of output of records in the 70s. The next one he made was Living in the Material World. And of course, it's, after those two bundles of music, he was going to come up a little short according to the critics. I don't think so. The songs on here, Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth, The Light That Has Lighted the World, Don't Let Me Wait Too Long, The Lord Loves the One That Loves the Lord, and Be Here Now, and The Day the World Gets Round. Now, George was a very spiritual man. He made no apologies for that. He did not hide it. He made it very well known, especially in his solo records. Next one we have by George is a alternative album cover. George Harrison, Dark Horse. On most albums, this is the back of it. This is the front of it. And that's the back right there. The songs on here that stand out is Bye Bye Love, which is a very loose, I can't say that enough, a very loose cover of the Bye Bye Love by the Everly Brothers. And Dark Horse, he had so much music, and some of it was okay, and some, you wish you had spent a little bit more time on. 33 1/3. This is a good album as well. Woman, Don't You Cry For Me. This song, It's What You Value, and Crackerjack Palace. Here's the inside of it. The next one we have by George is a self-titled album. And this has Not Guilty, which you can also find a version of this song on the Beatles Anthology 3, because it was first recorded then. The Beatles left it off of, I believe it was during the Let It Be and the Abbey Road sessions. They left it off, and it comes back here, and it's really well done. Again, instead of Here Comes the Moon, instead of Here Comes the Sun, he does a song called Here Comes the Moon, which was not very good. And Dark Sweet Lady was pretty good, and Your Love Is Forever. And also, a keynote about George Harrison during this time, he really seems to master the slide guitar, which, if you follow the Beatles, you would know that George changed the way he played guitars. At the beginning it was a regular guitar, and then a 12-string, and then he started to get into the sitar. So George was always exploring different forms of the guitar, and when it came to the slide guitar, he really put it into motion during the Let It Be album. Somewhere in England by George Harrison. This was released in, I believe, 80 or 81. Blood from a Clone. All those years ago, that was released just a little bit after the untimely death or murder of John Lennon. Teardrops, Writings on the Wall, and Hong Kong Blues. He's starting to get a little bit better. I mean, not better, but, he's putting out a little bit more quality to his songs. George Harrison, Cloud 9. This was his comeback album. This was from the mid-'80s, I believe. Yes, 87. Wow. 87. This was produced by Jeff Lynne, who was in an Electric Light Orchestra, which is very good friends with George. This has That's What It Takes. Just for Today. When We Was Fab tells the story, of course, just the word Fab should tells us about the Fab Four, the Beatles. Side 2, Devil's Radio, Breath Away from Heaven, and this album ends with Got My Mind Set on You, which was a really good song. I enjoyed it. And we move on to Heart, and I only have one Heart album, which is Dog and Butterfly. I have a love-hate relationship with Heart. I've had a lot of Heart, and then I trade them for other things. And then I'm looking through my collection to listen to Heart. I was like, man, where did all my Heart go? So they're with other people. Other people are enjoying it. But I do have a couple of their 80s on cassettes, but I really miss their 70s output on vinyl. Straight On was a rocker for them, and Dog and Butterfly is an acoustic song, and it stretches out. And Heart was a very good band with their instruments. They knew their instruments very well. The sisters wrote very good lyrics, and of course, and Wilson belted them out like no one else could. And we move on to the one and only Jimi Hendrix. Are You Experienced? Now, we all know that Jimi Hendrix is one of the greatest guitarists of all time, but also what is overlooked is his songwriting. He's a very fine songwriter, and he does play quite a bit of covers. Well, maybe not even that many covers. The covers that stick out, he made famous or made his own. But also, he has a lot of originals that are very good. This album has Purple Haze, Manic Depression, Hey Joe, I Don't Live Today, The Wind Cries Mary, Fire, Foxy Lady, and Are You Experienced? I know that I have. It's really good stuff. And right here we have Jimi Hendrix Smash Hits. This was the first Jimi Hendrix I owned on vinyl, which is the Greatest Hits collection, and I really enjoy it. Purple Haze, Fire, The Wind Cries Mary, Can You See Me, Manic Depression, Crosstown, on and all along the Watchtower. Paper In Sleeve is the same. And what we have next is the Essential Jimi Hendrix Volume 2. Sometimes when we get compilations of Greatest Hits, a lot of them have hidden gems in there. Songs that were only on these released on these greatest hits or on different compilations. So it's always good to go and say, hey, they've got all the greatest songs put together, and then a surprise or two. And this one does consist of the album where I was playing the Star Spangled Banner for our veterans, for our lost ones of war. Put that one back. This has, like I had said, on the Star Spangled Banner, Machine Gun, Crosstown Traffic Again, The Wind Cries Mary, and Hey Joe. It's a really good collection. And what I have next is a really good one as well by Jimi Hendrix. It's called Rainbow Bridge, the original motion picture. This was released after his death. I think this might have been one of the first releases that was after his death. And the songs on here, I was very surprised to see these songs, because sometimes when an artist passes away, their estate or whoever just puts junk together and stamps their name and puts it off for sale and gets the money. But not in this case. This is a very good album, and it's very it was very well received. This has Dolly Dagger, Room Full of Mirrors, Star Spangled Banner Again, Look Over Yonder, and Hear My Train Coming. And a lot of these this is some good stuff. I was just reading the people that were on here with him. It doesn't say the Jimi Hendrix Experience on there, but those are the people that are on here now. These were older songs that were put together as a compilation, and they did a very good job of it. And next we move on to one of the band members in the Eagles. His name was Don Henley. He was a drummer, lead vocals on more than half the songs, and wrote more than half. This was his debut album, I Can't Stand Still. The title track is a really good song, Talking to the Moon. Dirty Laundry was a big hit for him. Johnny Can't Read, which talks about the education system in our country back in the early 80s. And the inside, his lyrics, and just the guys that were with him on making this. And his second release, Building the Perfect Beast. This has one of my favorite songs of all time, The Boys of Summer. That will always be one of my top 20 songs. And maybe one day I will go through my albums and pick out my favorite 20 songs, and maybe I'll play them. We'll see how that goes. So The Boys of Summer. You're Not Driving, You're Not Drinking Enough. Not Enough Love in the World is an alright song. It could have been better without all the orchestra, but the writing was fantastic on there. Building the Perfect Beast, and All She Wants to Do Is Dance, and Sunset Grill. Those were big radio hits. All She Wants to Do Is Dance and Sunset Grill were big radio hits. And then the next album that I had by Don Henley is my favorite Don Henley. Not only my favorite Don Henley, but this might even be in my top 20 albums of all time. The End of the Innocence. This is a wonderful, wonderful album from beginning to end. I will tell you the key tracks that are, so I'm going to be telling you every song that is on here. The End of the Innocence with guest piano by Bruce Hornsby from Bruce Hornsby and The Range, and How Bad Do You Want It? Not Bad Enough. I Will Not Go Quietly with backing vocals by Axl Rose. When I first heard this on cassette, I was probably in junior high or high school. I was like, man, Don Henley and Axl Rose must be really good friends. But then as I got older, well, they both worked for Geffen at the time. So it was just their job. The Last Worthless Evening, which is a really good acoustic ballad. New York Minute tells the tale of a man lost in the world. And the backing vocals by Take 6, which was a R&B vocal group in the late 80s. Shangri-La was a good song. Give Me What You Got. If dirt were dollars, that wouldn't work anymore. And it ends with a very good ballad called The Heart of the Matter. And we move on to a band that was part of the British invasion. We are talking about Hermans Hermits. This was their second album, Hermans Hermits on Tour. I have recently gotten into Hermans Hermits. I knew a couple of songs, and then out of the blue, I kept on going record shopping, not finding anything, and sometimes you just start collecting a new band. And Hermans Hermits were one of them. My wife and I went to go see Peter Noone in concert. Peter Noone is the lead singer for Hermans Hermits, and he played a concert here in Houston, and it was a very good show. I really enjoyed him. And also, he's got a Sirius XM show on 60s on 6 at 6 o'clock Central Time on Saturdays, where he talks about the British invasion and the American music that inspired the British invasion. It's a pretty good insight into that world and into that time. The songs on here, Can't You Hear My Heartbeat? I'm Henry VIII, I Am. And they do a cover of For Your Love, Heartbeat, and I'll Never Dance Again. Yeah, it's they're very good bubblegum, you would say, or very pop. I wouldn't say call them pop rock, but this is good pop music of the 60s. And pop music of the 60s still had grit to them. And you know, I enjoy pop music here and there. So both sides of Hermans Hermits, if you notice the cover art of it, it is a illustration drawing by a famous comic book guy. I forgot his name. I know I saw it here the other day. Frank Frazetta, and I looked him up because I wanted to know what he did, and he did a lot of comics, and it slips my mind right now but what made me want to look was that look at the back. Look at the drawings up here in the corner. Oh, well, first of all, on stage we got Hermans Hermits, and up here on the balcony we have Queen Elizabeth with her husband Philip watching the band playing. Over here we've got the sitting U.S. president at the time, Lyndon B. Johnson. Over here on this row here, we got the Beatles, and sitting next to the Beatles is Barbra Streisand, and in the front row standing up is Fidel Castro. So if you want to press this on pause and just take a good look at that and look at the illustration, it's pretty interesting. And what I have next is a compilation, and right there tells a story about Hermans Hermits and how they became together. The back picture of Peter Noone. He started very young with them. I think he was in his, I want to say 16 or 17 when he had joined the group. And I'm leaning more towards 16 years old. The songs on here, like I said, were the greatest hits. I'm Henry VIII, I Am. Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter. That's my favorite song by them. Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter. I'm Into Something Good, which is one of the big hits. Can't You Hear My Heartbeat? The End of the World. Yeah. You know, they're a very good band to listen to. And what I have next is one of the founders of rock and roll. Talk about Buddy Holly. This compilation came out in 1978. To commemorate the movie that came out called The Buddy Holly Story. Yeah, I think it was called The Buddy Holly Story. And it was a big hit movie for them, for the movie industry. The songs on here are, this is called the 20 Golden Greats by Buddy Holly and the Crickets. That'll Be the Day, Peggy Sue, Words of Love, Every Day, Not Fade Away. I mean, these songs are just the who's who of the beginning of rock and roll. It Doesn't Matter Anymore, It's So Easy, Rave On, Peggy Sue Got Married, Bo Diddley. And also, Buddy Holly also wrote most of his songs and played lead guitar. This was a 3-piece band. And just amazing that he doesn't get enough talk about. He gets kind of talked about just about the plane crash with Richie Valens, but there's so much more to talk about him than just that. And next we have a band that was also part of the British invasion that named themselves after Buddy Holly, and that's the Hollies. which one of the band members here is Graham Nash, who went on to form one of the first supergroups, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And this has Bus Stop, Here I Go Again, Look Through Any Window, Just One Look, and On a Carousel. This is a pretty good album. It is their greatest hit, so it's fun to listen to. And who I have next is a band that made it big in the mid-'80s. They are a pop rock band. I'll call them pop rock. Huey Lewis and the News. I really enjoyed them. They are a big part of my childhood. They really had a good soundtrack to my life in the mid-'80s. The songs on this album. This was their second album. Working for a Living, Do You Believe in Love? And those were about the only two songs that were hit songs off of there. And what we have next is Huey Lewis and the News. This was their breakout album, Sports. This has a lot of great songs on here. The Heart of Rock and Roll, Heart and Soul, I Want a New Drug, Walking on a Thin Line, If This Is It, Please Let Me Know. If this ain't love, then let me go. Or let me know, something like that. Next one that they came out with was the album 4. There's the back of it. And the songs on here, Jacob's Ladder, Stuck With You, Doing It All For My Baby. And that's a kind of a song that has a doo-wop sound to it. And Hip to Be Square. Hip to Be Square was a pretty good song by them that would tend to be kind of a saying back in the day in the late 80s. Well, you know what, guys? It's very hip to be square. But yeah, Huey Lewis and the News. And the last but not least, I have a solo album by the lead singer of Mott the Hoople, Ian Hunter, and I need to get more of Ian Hunter. This is a really good rock album. And key note on here, it's produced by Mick Ronson and Mick Jones, and Mick Jones also plays guitar in here. Mick Jones of being from The Clash, and Mick Ronson being part of the Spiders from Mars, a fictional group with David Bowie. And the songs on here are pretty good. Central Park and West, Lisa Likes Rock and Roll, and Noises. And side 2 is a really good side on here. Starts off with Rain and Theater of the Absurd and Leave Me Alone. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me on the Letter H. I really hope that you all had a good time. I know I did. I really enjoy going through these albums and sharing them with y'all, because I look at things and I'm just like, man, I have that. So thanks a lot for joining me. And please join me for my next episode that I do the letter I, which I only have 2 bands with the letter I, and coincidentally enough, they both share the first word iron in their names. So I'm pretty sure y'all can guess who that's going to be. So please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. And please take care of yourselves and keep on rocking. And I'll see y'all next time.